What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we got to talk about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Probably a top 3 announcement at Gamescom. Now, obviously, we knew of the game. We knew it was coming relatively soon, but we got the official confirmation of the release date, which obviously is a big deal. And also, it is actually the game that is coming to PS5. That is huge, right? So we'll talk about that kind of towards the end of this video. They showed a trailer, right? Troy Baker kind of being the central focus. And I got to be honest, I'll walk you through kind of what I was thinking originally. I thought he was doing like the indie voice at first, but then I realized, oh, it's like a promotional type video, at least in the beginning, because I was like, man, I remember him trying to sound like Harrison Ford, and now he just sounds like Troy Baker, but it's like, okay, no. The people that were able to play this game say he's pretty good. So, I mean, like, it's their opinion, I guess, versus mine. He did sound fine when, every basically time we've heard him so far, but I just wanted to kind of throw that funny story out there. So, the game's got the date, December 9th, comes out obviously on Xbox and on PC, I think through Steam, through Game Pass. Now, there's actually 3 versions, or 3 editions, I should say, of this game. They're doing that thing that pretty much every game under the sun does now, which I've actually made a video on, and I'm not very happy with. So many games require now that you do the deluxe or collector's edition in order to get that early access, right? Pretty much every game, or at least most games, are doing early access. We get 3 days, 5 days, a week, whatever it might be. This game's 3, right? So you got to get the deluxe edition or the collector's edition to get 3 days early access. There also is going to be a story expansion coming to the game. You see in the trailer, again, a lot of focus, I guess, initially on Troy Baker, but then also just like the feel of the game. A lot more gameplay, like a lot more first person. Here's how combat relatively works. We heard a little bit more in the previews of, when gaming journalists were able to play the game. We'll talk about that in a second, but I think it was a good trailer. I really do. And I'm pretty excited. I figured this would be one of, if not the last, big games of the year. And I think technically it kind of is, right? Because Marvel Rivals comes out a few days before it. This, I do think, is the last big game that you would consider, of the year, seemingly taking all of January off. And then you got like 30 games now coming out in February. So you have that. Then we go into the previews of this game, which so far so good. Now, again, it's their opinion versus, what you might think. But I saw one interesting one from Video Games Chronicle, and they compared this game a little bit to Hitman and then also to Uncharted, right? So it's got some of like the classic, like over the top kind of actiony, sequences you might imagine from Uncharted, but actually he can use outfits and disguises to get into different areas of the map, and you'll have to constantly be switching them. It's not bulletproof, like enemies can see through those disguises. So honestly, it feels like, yeah, the game is kind of like a little bit of Hitman, a little bit of Uncharted, a little bit of first person, machine games. And I think that's actually kind of the thing they're talking about, where, they are good at first person stuff. And look, I'm still not completely sold, especially I think when it comes to like the whip or just the hand-to-hand combat. I do kind of get what they're going for, especially when they talk about like the puzzles and looking at artifacts, and like being able to see it in first person would be different, obviously, than seeing it in third. So like I get it to an extent. And for me, it's probably just going to have to come together in the end product. Like, I don't know if I'm entirely sold on the first person thing, but at the end of the day, unless I'm going the deluxe edition to get the 3 days early access, which I don't know about that, because you can get it through Game Pass, right? So that leads us to the final part of this video. So you can get it through Game Pass, you can buy it, you can get the deluxe or collector's edition, and then coming to PS5 in spring of 2025. So not the first quarter. I think actually is that Tom Warren, maybe he posted in one of his articles that he's hearing April, which would I think be like the first month that it could be that's not in that first quarter. But he did say in that article that it just depends on development, and because they're kind of working on it, right? And that's like the last thing they're working on. So it might be April, maybe it's pushed even further. And I mean, like, so thinking April, maybe to sometime in June, right, being like the absolute latest. That's big. I talked about this a little bit in a video on Podcast Now Plus yesterday, if you guys want to check that out. But it's kind of the same thoughts. It is probably the right move. You got to factor in contracts. We know how much like Marvel contracts are. They're ridiculous. They're actually insane, and they're even more insane to break the contracts with Marvel, right? But it could be like just a fat $100 million+ just to use the Indiana Jones license, which I don't even know if that's worth it, by the way. But it is something that happens when it's DC, or DC's not not really, I guess, doing it, but maybe Star Wars or Marvel or now something like this, the prices can get high. When you have prices that high, game development is high. Xbox, you're going to put on Game Pass. You imagine probably more people would get it through Game Pass than not. Are you making your money back? And is that a good long-term solution? Well, another long-term solution could be to put it out on the other console where you might get an extra couple million sales. Maybe. And that's the thing. That's what I think. This is going to be the big test because, we had Hi-Fi Rush and, Sea of Thieves was a pretty good test, I think, an Xbox game jumping over. But this is, I don't know. I wouldn't even know if I would say it's bigger than Sea of Thieves, but it's definitely bigger than Hi-Fi Rush or Pentiment, games like that. This is going to be a really interesting test to see, and I'd love to know numbers. Can it do? What will it do? Because it comes out so much earlier, right? So it's a fear of missing out. How many people have the Xbox versus PlayStation? Can it sell a couple million on PlayStation a few months later, or are you shooting for 500,000? What's even the number that they're shooting for? I don't know the answer. I'm sure they only are the only ones actually that know the answer. But it'll be really cool to see. This is going to be a big test. But as I've said before, I'm kind of generally I'm in favor of this strategy, especially when Xbox has seemingly given up on the console itself and they're more about games and distribution. It's not a good idea for the strength of the console. They continue to just weaken it every time they do it, right? So that way, be a terrible idea. And they are doing it. But I think they're doing it because they have given up. They don't care if the console's doing anything. They want the games to do well. And so that's the plan. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.